Think someone you know is keeping events from their past hidden from you? If you need answers about someone's past, whether it's traffic tickets, criminal records, updated contact information, or sex offender location data, Truthfinder has you covered. You can also run confidential background checks to make sure people you meet on dating apps are who they say they are. Go to truthfinder.com/podcasts for a special offer. That's truthfinder.com/podcasts.
The living room is where you make life's most beautiful memories. But your sofa shouldn't be the one remembering them. The new life-resistant, high-performance furniture collection from Ashley is designed to withstand all the spills, slip-ups, and muddy paws that come with the best parts of life. Ashley high-performance sofas and recliners are soft, on-trend, and easy to clean. Shop the high-performance furniture in-store or online at ashley.com. Ashley, for the love of home.
Welcome to True Crime Garage. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Nick, and with me, as always, is a man on the hunt to lock up the D Squad. D for dirtbags. Here is the captain.
It's good to be seen and good to see you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for telling a friend.
Today, we are very excited to be featuring Party at Steve Guttenberg's house by the wild and crazy hardworking folks over at Hoof Brewing in Marengo, Ohio. Party at Steve Guttenberg's house is a double IPA. It's juicy, tropical, and dank. ABV 8.4%, garage grade 5 out of 5 bottle caps. And let's give some thanks and praise to our good friends that helped us fill up the old garage fridge for this week's show. First up, a shout out to Marian from Springfield, Virginia.
And a big We Like Your Jib goes out to Anna from Tampa.
Next up, here's a cheers to Chelsea K. Hoyle in Johnson City, Tennessee. And last but certainly not least, we have Jessica Fay from Ventura, California. Everyone we just mentioned, they went to truecrimegarage.com, clicked on the pint glass, and contributed to the beer fund. And for that, we thank you.
Yeah, BWRUN Beer Run. For everything true crime, check out truecrimegarage.com. Sign up on the mailing list. Subscribe to us on YouTube. And Colonel, that's enough of the business.
All right, everybody gather around, grab a chair, grab a beer. Let's talk some true crime. It takes a whole lot of moxie to launch an outrageously successful hospitality business at the young age of just 23. To thrive right out of the gate with so little experience must truly be a 1 in a million success rate. Is it hard work, pure luck, or having a vision so compelling that drives people to flock to your business? For Bob Gill, it was clearly a magnificent combination of all three. But when the 37-year-old owner of several thriving bars went missing in September of 1994, his friends, employees, and the entire community were baffled. When his van was discovered 80 miles outside of town, they held their breath in anticipation and dread. Later, Bob's body was located near where his vehicle was recovered. The popular bar owner was found having been shot in the head. His lifeless body was found dressed as what the press could only refer to as a ninja. He had been discovered wearing a black ski mask and black clothing, and a holstered 9mm semi-automatic weapon strapped to his body, sporting a backpack filled with bullets and burglary tools. So how did a respected, successful, and dynamic business owner wind up dead in a rural pasture dressed as a cat burglar? Well, that's anyone's guess. And this is True Crime Garage. Robert Manuel Gill grew up one of 4 children in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was the only boy of the bunch, and he was extremely close to his father, Manuel. After high school, Bob would spend a year at the University of Cincinnati. Afterward, he moved about 110 miles up the highway to attend The Ohio State University. It was the early 80s, and Columbus, Ohio, home of OSU, some call it Buckeye Nation, well, it was growing and expanding. Bob, before he could graduate, he saw an opportunity, and he seized it. He took out a lease on a bar known as the Outer Inn Bar. So out, letter R, and the word in, Outer Inn Bar. The business at the time, before Bob took over, was losing money, but it was a great location. Okay, so it's ideally situated at the North Campus of OSU. And Bob had a vision, and the rest is Columbus campus bar history. He would take over this bar and make a lot of money and turned it into a thriving business. Bob had 0 prior experience as a proprietor of a drinking establishment. He turned the business around with little more than instinct, hard work, and sheer hubris of youth. Along the way, he sunk every dollar he made back into the business, resulting in the Outer Inn boasting the reputation of being one of the most popular bars on the OSU campus. And it's still a very popular campus bar to this very day. The tavern's name was a nod to the fact that patrons had a choice of either gathering on the large outdoor patio or hanging out on one of the 2 expansive interior floors, each of which contained pool tables and benches. Today, it is your typical campus bar, and so most of the patrons during the school year would be students. But where this bar really cleans up making a whole lot of money is on football Saturdays, because this bar is packed from the time they open on a football Saturday until 2 a.m. when they close. I've been in there after a football game. You cannot walk. There are so many people in there. It's standing room only.
Well, like you said, it's a great location because it's right off the main drag. It's right off High Street.
My guess, we're not old enough to know because Bob took over this bar in the early 80s.
Well, speak for yourself. I'm 97 and a half years old.
Then you might know, but my guess is that it must have been like a real dump before he took it over, because given that location and with the number of students there, I don't see how you could not draw a crowd, just given the location. A decade later, looking to expand his business, Bob took over a tired Northwest Side restaurant. This was called the Lone Star Steaks, located on Kenny Road. This time, Bob's vision involved converting the very outdated restaurant into a slick, new-looking sports bar, naming his newest venture Pockets Sports Bar and Grill. Bob installed a dazzling assortment of diversions. We've got widescreen TVs, a lot of video games, pool tables, air hockey tables, dartboards. This all resulting in a sports lovers and gaming utopia. It was quite the novel idea at the time. I mean, this was well before Dave and Buster's. And keep in mind, this is an adult-only establishment. And when you go in, it feels like a bit of an adult playground. So this gave and catered to the local clientele looking for more than just a place to eat, drink, and congregate. In the years that followed, countless rival establishments copied this vision, Bob's vision, in an attempt to emulate his success. But Bob always managed to stay a step ahead of his competitors. He advertised on the radio and TV and upgrading his equipment and hiring very talented staff. At around the time Pockets was starting to become lucrative, Bob decided to take on a business partner. He met a man named Martin J. McNamee while they were playing softball. So he meets this guy who goes by Marty in the early 1990s, and the two hit it off right away, Captain, even engaging in some business dealings together. This ultimately grew into a full-blown partnership with Marty McNamee buying into both bars, right? So he buys into both the Outer Inn Bar and Pockets with equally shared ownership. Location, I think, is going to be key here because we're going to have some very questionable events that are going to take place in this case. Just so people can kind of paint a roadmap in their minds while we go through each of these items. We should note here that the Outer Inn Bar, the first bar that he purchases, I believe it was 1981 that he purchased the Outer Inn. The Outer Inn is located at 20 East Frams Avenue in Columbus, Ohio. This is the North Campus area of Ohio State. Under Bob's ownership, it becomes one of the most popular bars in the campus area. Then 10 years later, so in 1991, that's when he purchases the Lone Star Steak Restaurant, turning it into the very popular Pocket Sports Bar and Grill. Pocket Sports Bar is located on Kenny Road. This is Kenny Road near the Henderson Road intersection. So this is on the city's northwest side, the northwest side of Columbus. So it's sometime around 1990 when Marty McNamee moves to Columbus and then eventually buying in with Bob. The pair continue to jointly operate both wildly successful businesses, which generate a substantial income for both. The partnership flourishes until Bob inexplicably goes missing, but this is in 1994 when he goes missing. And before Bob goes missing, there's some potentially key events that take place in Bob's world. The first takes place in January of 1994.
In 1994, there's going to be a lawsuit filed against Bob.
Yes, this takes place in January of 1994. The plaintiff is Mary Victoria Horan. So she files a sexual harassment lawsuit against Robert M. Gill, or Bob Gill. He is her employer. So he's the owner of these two bars, right? Horan was 28 at the time. Originally, she's hired as a waitress at Pocket Sports Bar. But later, she's promoted and moves up to working at the corporate office as like a secretary, performing clerical duties. In her lawsuit, she claims that the harassment began when she moved to corporate from the restaurant, claiming that Bob Gill made continual, unwanted, and uninvited sexual suggestions towards her. Now, I don't know exactly what went down, but this seems like a large sum of money here. She was seeking $15 million in damages.
Wow.
Horan's attorneys maintained that their client suffered daily harassment and inquiries into her sexual proclivities, performance, and partners from Bob. Now, the business owner, Bob, emphatically denied these allegations. In fact, he was claiming that Horan was the instigator of any sexual conversations that the two may have had together. So we have a he said, she said situation here. $15 million in damages is what she was seeking.
I know Bob Gill is a successful businessman, but I don't believe he's even worth $15 million.
No. And I think in these types of situations, my guess here, Captain, is that an attorney would tell you, really overshoot your shot and hope that they talk you down. A lot of times people are looking more for a settlement out of court. And I don't know how this was playing out behind the scenes, but Bob's going to go missing before it could play out in the courts. The other event that we should note here too is that in June of 1994, Bob's second marriage is annulled. Now, typically, we are saying the day in question in the garage when we are discussing these cases. But today, we are going to say the year in question, because as we go through this timeline here, I think everybody will agree that what we're going to see is a lot of questionable behavior, movements, and again, locations. That's why I wanted to note where the businesses were located for people unfamiliar with this case.
So a lot going on in Bob Gill's life. He has a marriage that is annulled. He has this lawsuit coming up. And we have some varying reports, and it's probably because of the time of day. But it's reported September 25th. Some people report September 26th is the last time that they see Bob Gill.
Yes, varying reports. Bob goes missing either on the 25th or 26th of September 1994, depending on which source you're picking up your information from. But like the captain said, I think that makes sense because the way that it seems to play out is either Bob is last seen shortly before midnight on the 25th or shortly after midnight on the 26th. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you, the beautiful listeners here, all of the information and let you sift through it and sort it out. The main narrative that we have here, Captain, is that Bob vanishes around 1 a.m. on September 26, 1994. Now, some sources report that he had spent the evening of the 25th at Marty McNamee's house, which is located in Westerville.
So this is his business partner.
This is his business partner. And according to this report, he is spending the evening of the 25th at Marty's house in Westerville before leaving to go to his girlfriend's house in the early AM hours. Another source indicates that according to Columbus police, Marty McNamee last saw Bob Gill, after Bob left Pockets late on the 25th. So in this report, it's like shortly after 11 p.m., I believe. From there, the report says that Bob went to the Meijer store on Cleveland Avenue. Now, for those that are unfamiliar, Meijer is a Walmart type of store where you can get groceries. Some locations you can buy tires for your car. You can buy hardware. You can buy pet supplies. You can buy pretty much everything there. It's a large box store that contains a large produce and grocery section. There's several of these large box stores scattered throughout the greater Columbus area. But back then, and I'm going off of memory here, Captain, but remember when we were just wee little lads, there was, probably 2 or 3 of these Meijer locations in the entirety of the greater Columbus area?
Yeah, I'm not a Meijer aficionado, so I'm not really for sure. But every time I hear Cleveland Avenue, I just think that might not be the greatest location.
So this location would have been the Meijer located near the intersection of Cleveland Avenue and 161. According to police, Bob is there to purchase some very interesting items, especially interesting for some late night shopping, right? So Bob purchased a hacksaw, bolt cutters, pliers, rope, and a flashlight.
That sounds like he's purchasing a kill kit.
If this is around midnight, can you imagine the cashier looking at Bob going through the line with these items in his cart? A hacksaw, bolt cutters, pliers, rope, and a flashlight.
Bob purchased all these items separately, but he could have bought them all packaged together in the Israel Keys Meyer's kill kit.
One thing I think maybe we should note here too is at that hour of the day, even today, but especially then, if somebody were looking to purchase these particular items, I'm thinking Meijer would be the only location that you could purchase these items at that hour of the day.
Yeah.
So it's reported that Bob, so let's note here, he's 37 years old at the time, but it's reported that he was last seen wearing a white pullover shirt and dark shorts. On the same day that Bob goes missing, Bob is profiled in a feature article in Business First. This is like a local magazine. I think a lot of the bigger cities had them back then. I believe it's one of those magazines or small newspapers that you can pick up for free. They're just, handouts at the grocery store or the market.
Yeah.
But the article is featuring interviews with several successful bar owners in the Columbus, Ohio area. In this piece, Bob outlines his tireless approach to owning and operating several lucrative drinking and eating entertainment establishments in Columbus. He attributes his success to keeping things in perspective, remarking that running a bar requires having a level head. And as said, ironically, the article is released the same day that Bob goes missing.
First, looking into this story, I think one piece of his success is how much he reinvests into the business. So I could see that playing or creating some kind of irritation towards other owners of the business. Going, well, why are we reinvesting so much money? I would like to get a profit back.
One thing that is unique about this case, among some others that we're going to delve into here in a little bit, but
this case is bizarre.
Yeah. So he's last seen either very late on the 25th or very early on the 26th. He's not reported missing until September 29th. Okay, so we got about 3 days that go by before he is reported missing. And although Bob lives and works in Columbus, Ohio, his 1993 Ford Astro van is found abandoned in rural Guernsey County. This is in the eastern portion of the state of Ohio.
I don't even know where that is at.
Well, so you know where Cambridge is. It's kind of near Cambridge. So if one were in Columbus, Ohio, and wanted to go to the state of West Virginia, you would hop on 70. And this would be heading east on Interstate 70 and on your way to West Virginia is the best way to describe it. And you're right. I did not know there's 88 counties in the state of Ohio, so I don't expect you or myself to know all 88 of them, but I had never heard of Guernsey County.
So it's roughly how far from Columbus?
This is about 80 miles away from where he was last seen. And again, last seen location drive. is that Meyer location.
So much more to get to. This case is going to get very bizarre very quickly.
Have you ever felt a sense of unease when you leave your home, wondering if everything will be safe while you're away? Simply Safe has protected my home now for almost 6 years, and the security and the service exceed all expectations. With Fast Protect monitoring and live guard protection, Simply Safe agents can act within 5 seconds of receiving your alarm and can even see and speak to intruders to stop them in their tracks. You'll never be locked into a long-term contract, so you can cancel anytime. Pricing is transparent and affordable at less than $1 a day with no hidden fees ever. Simply Safe has been named Best Home Security Systems by U.S. News and World Report for 5 years running and offers the best customer service and home security according to Newsweek. It's easy to install and activate your Simply Safe system in less than an hour, or choose professional installation to have a pro do it for you. True story, last weekend I left my home for several hours. When I returned, due to a malfunction, my garage door was wide open. I didn't panic. I didn't freak out. I simply chuckled because I knew that my home was armed and secured with Simply Safe, and I was very happy and put at ease in that moment right away. And as a pet owner, one with several fur babies at home, I must have monitored smoke detectors inside my home. Simply Safe gives me that peace of mind. Protect your home with 50% off a new Simply Safe system, plus a free indoor security camera when you sign up for Fast Protect monitoring. Just visit simplysafe.com/garage. That's simplysafe.com/garage. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's something you'd love to learn? As an adult, do you make time to learn new things as often as you'd like? Or was that something lost in childhood? If I could give one gift to many of my friends, I'd give them the gift of curiosity. Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something you'd like to learn? Gardening, a new language, maybe guitar, or maybe how to finally beat your best friend in bowling. Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder, because your back-to-school era can come at any age. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/garage today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/garage. This show is proudly sponsored by BetterHelp.
If you've heard of Ozempic or Wegovy, you've probably heard three things. They're effective, but they're expensive, and they're hard to get. That's where Ro comes in. Through Ro, you can access prescription compounded GLP-1s with the same weight loss ingredient as brand name GLP-1s at a fraction of the cost. Ro has compounded GLP-1s in stock now, and if you qualify, your medication ships in just 1 to 4 days. Don't have time to schedule a doctor's appointment? No problem. With Ro, you can see if you qualify from the comfort of your own home. Go to ro.co/garage. Memberships start at $99 for your first month. Medication costs are separate. That's ro.co/garage. Go to ro.co/garage for black box warning and full safety information. Compounded medication is not required to and does not receive FDA review or approval. RX only. The medication must be paired with diet and exercise modifications in order to achieve the stated results.
All right, we are back. Cheers, mates. Tall cans in the air. Cheers to you, Colonel.
Cheers to you, Captain. And here's a cheers to, we want to give a cheers to our friends at the Columbus Metropolitan Library. In particular, a wonderful lady over there. Her name is Michelle, who graciously provided us access to a lot of articles that we could not get, that weren't available online. So she was super helpful, and truly without her help, there would be no garage case file on this case. So shout out to Michelle and all the good people at the Columbus Metropolitan Library. Like the captain said, tall cans in the air. Where we left off, we have his vehicle. Bob is missing. His vehicle is discovered about 80 miles away from where he's last seen. So the way that this is reported initially is that the vehicle was found a few days after Bob was last seen. And this is a little convoluted because that's actually not the case. So to go through it all here, Bob lives and works in Columbus. His 1993 Ford Astro van is found abandoned in this Guernsey County in eastern Ohio. The van is found parked on a road near the Byesville asphalt plant. So this is Route 35. This is 5 miles south of Cambridge. Officials confirm that there is gas in the tank. So he didn't run out of gas and abandon the vehicle. The keys were still,
somebody else didn't.
Yeah. And the keys are still in the ignition when the vehicle's found. Deputies found a 9mm shell on the floor of the vehicle. And we're going to circle back to that in just a second here. While the media reports that the van is found on September 28th, it's actually discovered probably about 4 or 5 hours after Bob was last seen in Columbus, Ohio. This is according to family members of Bob's. The empty vehicle had been observed by the Ohio State Highway Patrol, found near Byesville, Ohio. So the vehicle, this doesn't raise any suspicion because remember, he's not reported missing at this time. So they find the vehicle, but it's not until a couple days later that he's actually reported missing by family. His sister, Tina Penter, contends that Bob has no associates in Cambridge or Byesville and that he had no reason to be there.
Well, this doesn't make a lot of sense to me either, because you'd think And maybe because he had so much going on in his life that if he wasn't seen at one location or one business that he had, that maybe they just assumed he's at another location. But it seems a little strange to me that it takes so many days for him to be reported missing.
You know, I'm guessing it would have been noticeable that he's not at either business in the coming days. But as said, there was a corporate office. He did have an office that was away from the businesses, the bars. So maybe people just thought that he was there and nobody knew that he was missing for a couple of days.
Right.
Now, a couple of days after he's reported missing, Bob's body is discovered in a cow pasture by a farmer and the farmer's wife. This is in Byesville. So now we're at October 1st. So a quick rundown refresher here. He goes missing. He's last seen either on the 25th or 26th of September. The vehicle is actually found about 5 hours after he's last seen, but it's reported that it was found on the 28th. He's reported missing on the 28th or 29th, and that's when they pieced together, oh, this missing guy, we found his abandoned van. And now it's a couple days after that his body is located. They're not out searching for his body or for Bob. This is just a farmer and his wife who are out on their property that find Bob on October 1st. Bob was killed by a single gunshot wound to the head. His blood-soaked body is found less than a mile from where his abandoned van had been discovered. Again, this is Guernsey County, Ohio, roughly 80 miles from where Bob lived and worked.
Well, give me a second. So I'm trying to wrap my head around all this. So we have a successful businessman from Columbus, Ohio. He owns multiple businesses, mainly bars, eateries, that type of thing. He has a piece in a magazine come out about how successful he is. He goes to visit his business partner, leaves pretty late in the morning, goes to Meijer, buys some very suspicious items. We can possibly assume that he drove his van out by himself or maybe with somebody else. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
About 80 miles away from Columbus. Then his body is found within a couple miles of the vehicle, dead. This is bizarre.
Less than a mile from his vehicle. And this location, too, interestingly enough, we're assuming Bob got there on foot, but the property owners say that they use an all-terrain vehicle to navigate getting out to this location. The distance between where the van is parked along Route 35 and the location of Bob's body, you have to pass through a briar patch, woods, and even a creek.
And what's the damage to the body?
Single gunshot wound to the head. Strangely, Bob is dressed as what is often referred to by the media as a ninja. So he's found clad in black clothing. He's wearing a ski mask, black pants, black sweater, and black or brown gloves. Bob Gill was carrying a loaded 9mm semi-automatic handgun in a holster. He's carrying a knapsack or backpack that is found on his person. Inside this pack, we have bullet shells and what typically would be described as burglary tools, right? We have that hacksaw that he purchased, the pliers, also found was a screwdriver, bolt cutters, rope, and tape.
So bizarre. Do we have any evidence that would tell us whether or not he inflicted this wound on himself? Or
that's exactly where we're going with this. So The detectives, what they're going to tell us, a detective from Guernsey County Sheriff's Office tells the media that there had been no burglaries in the area at the time of the incident. And I think they had to say that based off of what he's found with.
Yeah.
And the Guernsey County Sheriff's Office would later tell the media that they did not think that the gun found on Bob's body was the murder weapon.
Here's what's difficult, though. We find him, so we can assume that he's the victim, but because of the items found on him and because of his clothing, he looks like the perpetrator of a crime.
He looks like he's going out to rob, burglarize, or potentially kill somebody. Yes. So that's what they tell the media initially, right? That we don't believe that the gun found on him was the murder weapon because this firearm had not been discharged recently. They also find a shell casing. This is found near his body, but this shell casing is later determined not to match the 9mm weapon that Bob was carrying.
We found a shell casing in his van. So does that match? And then my other question is, do we have any evidence that there was a crime committed inside his van?
None that's been reported.
Right.
One question that comes up immediately in this case for many people reviewing the information is, was he killed where he was found, or was he killed elsewhere and dumped at this location? Well, we know based off of the pool of blood that is at this location and the single gunshot that he was killed where he was found. So he had been shot once in the cheek about an inch below his right eye, and the bullet that killed him was never recovered. We get the shell, but not the actual bullet. There's no signs of a violent struggle other than that pool of blood and the shot to the head.
Again, it makes you wonder, is there a possibility that Bob was out there to commit a crime with another individual or multiple individuals, but that was all a ruse to get him out there by himself? I mean, this is just strange.
Well, yeah, and it would appear, I'm guessing here, Captain, I can't prove it 100%, but it would stand to reason that look, it's difficult to dress a dead body. So he likely was in that getup before he was killed at that location. And all of those weird items that's found in his backpack are items that we know he purchased from the Meijer store. So what the hell was he up to? And then the other thing too is, even though he's been missing now for several days, investigators tell us that they believe that he died within hours of the last time that he was seen.
Yeah, so many questions here. If I'm law enforcement, I'm going, first of all, why is he dressed this way? Why does he have these items? But also, why is he in this location? Because, I mean, look, if I'm law enforcement and you find Bob a couple blocks from one of his businesses, well, at least I know why he was there. That's the area that he frequents. This is 80 miles away. And then my question is, where is he going in this field? Like, I mean, no, seriously, like, is there a mansion within a quarter mile? Is there some location that would have something of value?
Mm-hmm. Well, and like you had said earlier, when I had mentioned the gas, you said, well, you know, I said he didn't run out of gas and leave his vehicle there. And you said, well, and neither did anybody else. So what you have to wonder here is, yeah, he has a gun on him when he's found dead, right? The gun's found holstered on his person.
Right.
Is somebody in the vehicle with him? One or two other persons, who knows? Is he marched out to this area and then shot, and then they put the gun on him? Now, he was a gun enthusiast. He owned several guns. I've not got a clear confirmation that gun that was found on him, that he owned it, but they've never said that anybody else did either. And I'm glad that you're circling around on location here of where he is found, because to me, that was equally puzzling. Like, as much as his weird outfit that, again, the newspapers described him dressed as a ninja or some kind of cat burglar, the location of where he is found, just like the captain said, is nowhere near any of his businesses. But more importantly to me, the Meijer that he went to late that night to purchase these items, and Meijer, all of the Meijer stores that I have been in have security cameras, and a good deal of them. And even though this is 1994, I'm still guessing that that's how they piece together, because we get a statement that says he's last seen wearing a white shirt and shorts. And we know that when he's found dead, he's wearing all black. So
ninja.
I'm guessing here that information is coming from police finding footage, because the statement is that he purchased these items. So either he used a credit card and they can confirm that his credit card paid for these items, or they have him on camera and they can physically see him going through the line and paying for and purchasing these items. So the Meijer is nowhere near his home. The Meijer is nowhere near either of his businesses.
Yeah, but see, the Meijer to me seems, because I know the location, not that hard to then jump on 70 from that location.
That's what I was going to say. So if one were to get in their vehicle, like let's say Bob gets into his vehicle, he lives north of 270, north of the Worthington area. That's not going to mean anything to people that live outside of Ohio, but
yeah,
if he were to just drive a short drive south, and like the captain said, hop on 270, he could have got to that Meijer fairly quickly, hopped back on 270 and got over to Interstate 70, and taken that out to near where his body was found.
And here's the big problem with the location for me is we don't know if this was the final destination of where he was going.
Yeah.
Because like I said, you can then go, well, we know where the body was found, so let's do a 10-mile radius. Within that 10-mile radius, is there any house or any reason for somebody to want to break in to someplace, right?
Well, and like his family says, they are saying he doesn't know anybody in this area to their knowledge. And
but here's my other question, though. We have this divorce, and then we have this lawsuit. And so then my other question would be, is there anybody involved in his life that is connected to somebody in this area? Because I could see somebody snapping and going, you're trying to sue me? Well, I'm going to have something done to your family. And then maybe that will stop all this nonsense.
The thing here, though, I do want to point out, and again, this Meijer location and the choice of picking this Meijer for him to go to may have little to do with nothing, but this Meijer location is not far from where his business partner Marty lives. Now, again, if one were wanting to purchase these items at that hour of night, that time of day, you likely the only place would be a Meijer, and that would be even though this Meijer is close to Marty's house, it would be the closest Meijer to where Bob lives as well.
Don't you find it weird, though, because of the time of day, that these items become more suspicious? You know, like if a guy was purchasing these on a noon on Saturday, if you're the cashier, noon on Saturday, a guy purchases these items, maybe not that big of a deal. You might not even remember it. But somebody purchased these items at 2, 3 in the morning, you go, well, this guy's up to no good.
Yeah. I mean, these are all standard items that many people would have in their garage or at work in a maintenance closet somewhere. But somebody going through the line at midnight buying these items seems very strange.
But if I'm law enforcement, I want to know what was the conversation with my business partner?
Yeah.
Because to me, and we will never know this possibly, is whatever Bob Gill was planning, when did he, I mean, the plan could have happened 2 weeks ago, but now it's go time. It's time to execute that plan. Or was this way more sporadic?
Hang on, because it's going to get even more bizarre. Okay.
More bizarre than ninjas.
Yeah. Now, what is not bizarre is that we learned that Bob Gill had a life insurance policy valued at about $600,000. There are two beneficiaries for this policy. One is Bob's father, and the other is his business partner, Marty. Bob's father also inherits his son's stake in the businesses.
So he is possibly worth millions of dollars to his father.
Yeah, so a little less than a year after Bob Gill is murdered, Marty buys out Bob's father. So now Marty becomes the lone owner of both of the bars. He purchases Bob's father's share in the businesses for $700,000.
Seems like a pretty good deal.
Now we're going to go to about 11 months after Bob's murder, and we're going to get some very strange events in August of 1995. Marty McNamee, who still owns both of those bars, and by this point he owns a third bar called Shooters, which is out east, and it's east in the greater Columbus, Ohio area. He's 29 at the time. He leaves the Outer Inn bar in the early morning hours of August 18th, 1995. He is accompanied by a regular customer who he offered a ride to. And it is said that Marty had given this person a ride multiple times. This wasn't the first time that he had offered a ride to this customer that came into the bar. Now, on their way to wherever they're going, they spot a person walking or potentially hitchhiking who is an acquaintance of the person that's riding with Marty.
That's strange.
So they pick him up, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the drive, Marty says that the hitchhiker that they had recently picked up pulls out a gun. And Marty McNamee says that he forced him to drive to his residence where the two people that he's giving the ride to, the regular customer and this random person that they picked up who pulled the gun on him, they douse him, Marty, with gasoline, and they rob him of about $5,000 cash.
Jesus.
McNamee tells authorities that one of his abductors then took him to a location north of Columbus. So now he's up in Delaware County. This is near Ohio 750 and Interstate 71. He says that the one guy tied him to a tree.
Okay, but hold on a second. I'm just wrapping my head around this.
Yeah.
Marty's business partner's dead. Marty
Yes.
buys out his father.
Yes.
So now he has 3 businesses. He is now going to give a ride to a known customer. They come across a hitchhiker. That hitchhiker is connected to that known customer. So obviously this is some kind of ruse. Hey, you're going to take me back home. Oh, there's this hitchhiker. We pick him up, and now we have this robbery in place.
Well, I do want to point out something that I think is very key to this very interesting story that we're hearing, right? About Marty being abducted, robbed, doused in gasoline, and tied to a tree. All the way up in Delaware County. Columbus is in Franklin County. So he's north of Columbus. We hear this story. We only have Marty telling us this story.
Right.
I want to point that out because I think that is of great significance in this story. So the man he gave a ride to, the regular customer, we know who that is. His name is Monroe Liggett. The person that they pick up, the hitchhiker or the person that is seen walking, Marty says he doesn't know that person's name other than Monroe told him that guy, hey, that's Carl. That's my buddy Carl. We should pick him up.
Yeah.
So they pick up Carl, and according to Marty's story, Monroe and Carl then rob him. Carl pulls the gun. It's unclear by Marty's account if Monroe is willingly assisting Carl in this robbery or if he's like forced into it. Because as the story goes, Carl's the only one with a gun. So Carl's probably in charge if this, in fact, went down the way that Marty says that it went down.
Right.
Remember where we left off, Marty is in another county tied to a tree in the middle of the night. He maintains and claims that he eventually was able to free himself from being tied from the tree. This is around 8 a.m. in the morning. Now he's walking along a road where he's trying to flag down passing cars, and a car eventually pulls over and picks him up. I believe there's 2 people in this vehicle. They drive him to St. Anne's Hospital, and he's treated for some very minor injuries that he has.
Right.
I do want to point out it is noted in the injuries that he had several insect bites, so maybe that is some proof that he might have been tied to a tree. out in the country
Yeah,
area
my question
somewhere.
to the eyewitnesses was, did he smell like gasoline? Because we could prove that part of the story too.
Yeah. So they did find gasoline on, I think it was on his boots or shoes. But yeah, you're right. As far as the rest of him goes, I didn't see. Well, let's continue on because what we have here happened. Remember, he knows one of the guys, right, that was in the car. So after he tells this story to police at the hospital, the police announced that Monroe Liggett, one of those guys, is charged with aggravated robbery and kidnapping. Liggett is 31 years old at the time. He's described as a African-American male and a transient individual who often stayed near the North Campus area of Ohio State University. And again, the second man, the other man, is only known as Carl to Marty. He provides a description of Carl to police, and they put together a composite sketch, which is released to the public. They're trying to identify who this Carl guy is. 11 days after McNamee is found walking along the road saying he's been tied to a tree and kidnapped, Westerville and Columbus police discover a burned body in the basement of Marty's home.
Jesus Christ.
Right. So when he gets out of the hospital, what's already known at this part that we didn't include yet in the story is Marty's home was burned to the ground. According to his story, he knew that they doused him and portions of his home in gasoline, but he didn't know that they actually set it on fire. Remember, according to his story, only Carl is the one that takes him out to the middle of nowhere and ties him to a tree.
Right.
At gunpoint. The house is so badly burnt down that police were like sifting through the rubble for 11 days before they find this burned body in the basement of Marty's home. Initially, they have no idea who the burned dead person is. And part of this too, like they couldn't get to the basement location for a while because after the home had been burnt down, it wasn't structurally safe at portions of the home for people to be in there. So it required like a construction crew to come in with heavy machinery to start pulling this house apart, basically. But the charred body is later identified of being that of Monroe Liggett, the homeless transient person who was a regular at the Outer Inn bar, who Marty claims he gave a ride to. And that Monroe knew this Carl guy that they also picked up. He's identified using dental records.
So as the story goes so far, you go, well, we have these two individuals. We don't know if they're in cahoots, but now that we find one of their bodies, you start going, well, they're not in cahoots. And now we got to find this Carl guy because it seems like he's responsible for robbing Marty, putting him out in the woods, leaving him possibly for death, and then also burning down the house with this body inside. But it makes you wonder, well, why wouldn't he just leave Marty's body in the house with the other guy?
Exactly. Well, here's the thing. The initial thought amongst police and even like people in the neighborhood and people paying attention to this case at the time was that Monroe Liggett, maybe he accidentally killed himself while he was setting the house on fire. Right. We're covering up some crimes here that took place. We robbed this guy, took roughly $5,000 cash from him, according to Marty. Carl takes Marty out into the middle of nowhere, and Monroe must have been dousing the house with gasoline, sets it on fire, and somehow maybe got trapped inside and couldn't get out. That's what everybody thought in the beginning.
Yeah.
After a while, so we get the Franklin County coroner, who eventually, doing an autopsy on this charred body, figures out that, well, this guy didn't die because of the fire. He died from a stab wound. It goes from being an accidental death to now this is a homicide.
Right.
It's all very strange. And to this day, Carl has never been identified. Monroe Liggett, his murder, being stabbed to death, that murder has never been solved.
But there's so many questions. If you're law enforcement, the first question is, does Carl even exist?
Right.
Because this could just be a ruse of, well, I gave this guy a ride home. There's a reason why I wanted him dead, so I kill him at my house. I then set my place ablaze. That will cover up the murder, possibly get me some insurance money. But then I guess the question is, then how does Marty then get out into Delaware County?
That's a really good question.
He would have to have somebody else involved with him in order to do so. Or the other question is, do you believe Marty's story?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because before we get to Marty's story, his vehicle, right? We want to know the situation with his vehicle. Where was his vehicle found? Was it found back at his home? Because according to Marty's story, there's 3 people and only 1 vehicle. How did Marty get to where he's eventually found? Either somebody had to give him a ride, or he was able to ditch a vehicle somewhere, and that's never been detected.
Right.
But
and if this guy, Carl, drove him out to Delaware, he most likely didn't drive back to Marty's house. They would have found the vehicle abandoned somewhere else.
Look, I'm not saying that Marty is lying about this story, but keep in mind, nobody sees Marty tied to a tree. He's not found tied and bound. He's found walking alongside the road, saying that he was eventually able to free himself a few hours or several hours after he was brought to that location by, air quotes, Carl. Now, what we do know is, like the captain said, his business partner has been murdered about a year, 10, 11 months prior, and Marty did gain from the death of his business partner. He was one of the beneficiaries, and
right, so he had to be a suspect in the murder
and depending on which source you go to, he may have been the last person to see Bob Gill alive before Bob went to the Meyer store, which is, oh, by the way, not far from Marty's home. Again, this is complete speculation. Okay.
I'm here for it.
But here's the problem. What if Marty had some kind of hand in whatever happened to Bob, however that played out with Bob's murder?
Right.
The problem with people with money, if you don't do something yourself, you hire somebody to do it. The problem with people with money is if you hire someone to do it, well, now they got something on you and you still got money.
So if you look at Marty's story, but you got to look at this whole story as a complete story, you go, well, Marty had this connection to this transient lifestyle guy, Monroe. And so you could start then laying out a story that, well, maybe Marty paid this guy to get rid of his business partner, and then eventually turned on you and said, you know, you gave me some money, but now I need more money, or I need whatever. And so then you decided to get rid of him.
Yeah. Because here's the thing. So if he paid Monroe to do something to Bob, or paid Monroe to help him do something, now Monroe can keep going back to the well time and time again to this guy that's clearly got a lot more money than he has, and say, look, remember this thing we did, or remember that thing I did for you? I could rat you out. I could tell some people, or you could give me this and I could stay quiet. Does that happen multiple times and eventually Marty gets tired of paying up, or decides that, you know, I can get rid of this guy and now my new problem goes away, but I have to create this Carl guy that's never been located and found, because the story can't just involve Marty and Monroe, right? Because Monroe's found dead in Marty's basement.
And what an elaborate story it is. Again, you have to then question, is it true? Could be true. Or Is it completely fabricated?
And a lot of people hone in on the lawsuit and say, well, this probably has something to do with Bob Gill's murder. But I say this: you can't squeeze blood from a rusty nail, right? This Bob Gill, who's being sued for $15 million. Again, we don't know if the plaintiff is hoping to settle out of court for a large amount of money or what she was hoping would happen. But she's not getting any money if Bob is killed. If Bob's dead, she's getting nothing. The person she's suing, I guess maybe in some way she could turn around and sue the business, but I don't want to get into the muck and the mire of the legal, lawsuit system here. But
am I wrong for thinking that if you're law enforcement and you can figure out what happened in Bob Gill's murder, that you're more likely to figure out if this story that Marty is telling you, whether that's true or not?
Well,
because the thing that still doesn't make any sense to me is why is Bob dressed up like a cat burglar?
And again, I don't think somebody dressed him up like that afterward to try to make this situation confusing. I think he dressed himself that way, but was he forced to do so?
But why?
He could have been forced to do so. He could have been marched out to the location where his body was found. Now, Marty is not clean in any of this. So Marty eventually will go on to be indicted for tax and mail fraud, as well as conspiracy and money laundering. He is sentenced to serve 36 months for defrauding the IRS. He pled guilty. He admitted to skimming receipts from the bars, filing false tax returns, and destroying records and receipts. He also admits to purposely flooding his home to collect insurance money. This obviously a different home than the one that was burnt to the ground by Carl and Monroe. So he serves time in prison, and he is ordered to pay over $500,000 in restitutions. The thing, too, that I want to point out, yes, there's this lawsuit, and maybe her claims are real. Maybe she was a victim. We don't know. We can't say. But what I want to make sure that we include in our reporting of Bob Gill's murder is that the employees that worked for Bob that were interviewed had nothing but really great things to say about this guy. And none of them could come up with any reason why he would be dressed like that. None of them had any idea why he would be in that location. His family says he had no reason to be there. His business partner, Marty, says he had no reason to be there. And all the people that worked for him were, according to police, were shocked and numb because none of them could fathom who would want to hurt their boss, who was, yes, he's successful, but he was also a nice, fun guy.
You were talking about surveillance. I'd want to know if there's some surveillance in the parking lot and to see if there's any movement in Bob's van. Because, again, you're hanging out with your business partner. Your business partner, if he created this fake story later, he is just creating confusion. So now I'm sitting down with my business partner. I have this plan to get rid of him. I go in the van with him. I tell him what to buy. I mean, you obviously have the possibility that Bob doesn't go along with the plan if you don't go in with him.
Yeah, and we have a bunch of different investigating agencies here, obviously, because we have Guernsey County Sheriff's Office, who were notified when the body was found. We have the Ohio State Patrol, who found Bob's van less than a mile from where his body's found a few days later. We have Westerville Police Department involved because that's where Marty lived, and they had to bring in Columbus personnel to go through and sift through the home, who eventually find the burned body in the basement of Monroe Liggett, who was also murdered. And you have Columbus Police Department that's been involved, working in tandem with Westerville and the Guernsey County Sheriff's Office in both of the homicides. Marty eventually gets out of prison, and last time I tracked him, he was living down in Florida.
Bob Gill, good guy. Doesn't make any sense that he would be dressed like this, found in the middle of nowhere, dead. But the other individual, Marty, seems to have a very flawed character. It's one of the most bizarre cases I think we've looked at.
Well, and this case has kind of become folklore here in Central Ohio, right? Like just very much like Brian Schaefer's case, where you talk to people around town and somebody will say, whatever happened to that guy that went into the bar and disappeared, right? It's folklore at this point. People forget the name Brian Schaefer in town. But what they don't forget that has remained is this story of the guy that went into a bar and then disappeared. He never came out. What happened to him? Well, same as with Bob Gill, I've had plenty of people suggest this case, but no victim name provided. So it took us a while to get here with part of that, because I've had like 3 people over the years go, hey, why don't you cover the, that guy that was found dressed like a ninja out in the middle of nowhere? That's the folklore of this story.
Well, and think about the thousands of people that visit that bar weekly. But like you said, during Ohio State games, that bar is packed. That area is packed. How many people go into that bar and go, hey, the guy that used to own this was murdered, found dressed as a ninja in a field?
That, the Outer Inn and the Varsity Club, got to be the 2 most popular bars to attend before, during, and after an OSU football game. Still to this very day. I mean, you cannot even park near the place because it's so packed, and the people spill out into the streets during those football Saturdays. I want to make sure that we give a shout out here, Captain, to a retired Columbus detective. His name is Phil Walden, who had a very impressive career. We're giving him a shout out because he worked for 11 straight days. He worked 16-hour days for 11 straight days when Marty McNamee's home in Westerville was found burned down. He worked that crime scene all those hours for that many days in a row. All in all, Phil Walden, during his impressive career with the Columbus Police Department, he worked for 33 years in the Columbus Police Department. He took 0 sick days during 33 years of service. And during that time, he worked almost 6,000 crime scenes that he processed.
I want to thank everybody for joining us here in the garage each and every week.
Mm-hmm.
For bonus content, you can sign up on Patreon or Apple Podcast subscriptions, and you get more True Crime Garage for your earballs. And until next week,
be good, be kind, and don't litter.
Some mysteries can be solved by looking at the facts, but in some cases, answers lie in the unknown. I'm Ashley Flowers, and each week on my podcast, So Supernatural, we explore some of the world's most bizarre occurrences and unravel their possible explanations, no matter how strange. Because sometimes, to get to the truth, you have to look beyond what we know to be reality. Listen to So Supernatural now, wherever you get your podcasts.